Hey everyone, just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the Dream Blue Velvet shrimp tank now that they have migrated to their new home. So, let's just really quick recap some details. Old tank, over there, caused anaerobic bacteria poisoning because somehow anaerobic bacteria was growing all up in there. And that's not something you can filter out or test for because technically anaerobic bacteria is part of the filter. It's the last stage of filtration that's not normally seen in freshwater tanks, and when it does happen, it has a tendency to poison its inhabitants because the inhabitants are invertebrates. They are particularly sensitive to this change, and it wasn't really noticed until every single parameter was tested for and everything came up clean, and we filtered everything, even with chemical filtration capabilities, using black diamond carbon and Purigen to purify the water on top of biological filtration. Still no dice. So only after I started to see the bubbles starting to form everywhere that I realized anaerobic bacteria was probably in the tank growing, which is actually quite bizarre because, like I said, it's not very common in freshwater tanks. Moving over to the new tank, you can see things are going quite well. Shrimp are acting shrimpy, and yes, I mean that in a genuine manner, because shrimp do have a particular behavior that they do. For instance, if I can get this to focus, shrimp, scuttle about. They swim. They do their thing. Shrimp down here, for instance, they'll move the swimmerets, clean themselves. They will pick at the ground. Like this guy, scouring for nom-noms. That's good. Shrimpy behavior is good. If they're not, if there's not a decent amount of shrimp doing that, that might indicate something is wrong, and you might want to check some parameters, because that is typical shrimp behavior, and when they don't act like shrimp, there's usually a reason for it. Also, you might notice, nearite snail, zebra, new buddy, doing good. Got him the other day. He's been squiggling around. I actually don't know the proper term for a snail's movements. Actually had a great discussion about that once on Reddit. We couldn't actually come to an official consensus as to what the word is, because it technically has a foot, but it's not hopping. We decided maybe undulating is probably the best word for it, but the point is, we have a nearite snail. The nearite snail is moving around like crazy to the point where I can't even keep up with him half the time and try to figure out where he's gone, and I'm like, hey, where'd he go? I look around the tank, and I'm like, oh, there you are, like 5 minutes later. So the point is, he's in there, and there's a good reason why I have this particular nearite snail, because nearite snails, particularly zebras, I like the best, because they can grow pretty large. Scour the tank and clean algae everywhere they go. That's kind of their main prerogative, and that's a good thing, because for whatever reason, the algae in this tank is what I believed allowed the propagation of the anaerobic bacteria to happen in the first place. Now, you might be wondering, well, what kind of algae was it? I don't believe it's a typical type of algae that you will find in many aquariums, so you need not worry. And why do I think that? I believe it was cross-contamination from the siphon. When I clean out the tanks, I use the same siphon to pull water out. It all goes down the same hole. And this is my wild fish tank. The fish in there come from the wild. The substrate is from the wild. And even though, yes, I have a very powerful UV filter to sterilize the crud out of everything, algae is a particular pain in the butt. And I know from first-hand experience building many wild tanks over the years, wild algae is insane compared to normal algae. I don't know what it is about wild algae, but it is far more vicious than any type of algae I've ever seen grow naturally in home aquariums. So, cross-contamination can be something as easily as using the same net to grab stuff, the same siphon, what have you. Anything that touches that water and then touches the rest of this water can cross-contaminate something as simple as algae. And because I use Seachem Stability as my main bacteria in a bottle, Seachem Stability does have aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. Normally the anaerobic bacteria is what you would use in conjunction with the aerobic in saltwater tanks, but that bacteria is good for both. It's not supposed to happen like this, but it did, and it's done it in a very bizarre way. So, I have my nearite snail cleaning algae, And the nearite snails like this just eat whatever algae it can come across, you know. Nearite snails are particularly better than most snails you can put in a freshwater tank to do this job, which is great. That's why I have him, but I also have a new snail buddy. This is a rabbit snail. Now, when I got the little nearite snail buddy, I knew I was going to get him to clean the algae off the walls of the glass, but I know that anaerobic bacteria can also grow underneath the substrate, because anaerobic, meaning more or less, generalizing here, little to no oxygen or very low oxygen would be like the general idea of anaerobic. When you have a thick sand bed, there's not water flowing through it. Water flows over it, which means the oxygen in the water is flowing over it as well, not going through it. And that means there's very little oxygen underneath the sand bed. Now, people with thick sand beds in particular need to have certain types of snails to move the sand bed, to aerate it, to make sure the growth of anaerobic bacteria does not grow underneath. And that's when people say, hey, get Malaysian trumpet snails, they're great at that, but I personally absolutely 100% despise Malaysian trumpet snails, because people say, oh, they won't reproduce like crazy if you don't overfeed. But the problem is they will always find food, because they will eat algae too and anything else they come across, leftover foods, yada yada yada. Point is, I don't like them. They reproduce too quickly. Once they're in the tank, it's nearly impossible to get rid of them all. So, what do? I got a rabbit snail, because rabbit snails are like Malaysian trumpet snails, only huge and colorful and fun. And they reproduce very, very slowly, and this guy was actually free. The pet store had a few of them, but they didn't think they were going to make it in their own tanks. You know, their tanks were, they're fine, but they don't very, the store I go to get these guys, it's not set up for snails, let's put it like that. So I know the guy that works there, and he was kind enough to offer me half off, and I'm like, alright, yeah, I mean, I need one of these guys anyway, I'll give it a shot. And he's like, you know what, just take it for free. That way you don't have to worry about returns or anything. If something happens to him, great guy, by the way. You know, he the one person at the store who actually knows what he's doing. Works in the fish area, thank God. So it's always a pleasure to talk to him. But yes, I have a rabbit snail, and he's been sitting here, coming in and out of his shell, doing his thing. I hope he acclimates and adjusts and comes out and starts moving around, because that would be fantastic. I love rabbit snails. If you're looking for a Malaysian trumpet snail alternative, rabbit snails are fantastic. If you don't like rabbit snails, maybe you might go for a brackish style cone snail, which would be something along the lines of a lava snail or a black devil spike. Scientific name, Phaeunus ater for black devil spike and Phaeunus magma for lava. They are basically the same thing, just different colors on their skin. Rabbit snails, I believe, are Tylomelena or something like that. I know they're abbreviated to Tylos. Scientific names, I can't remember them all, guys. I'm sorry. But yes, the shrimp are acting shrimpy. The snails are acting snaily. Everything is good. And yes, there are a few deaths here and there because of the mass transfer. And on top of that, look, a few of these guys were poisoned from the anaerobic bacteria. That a new tank change does not change about them. So if they were just too far gone, they would have passed away anyway. There's nothing that can be done about that. But I have very good reason to believe the mass majority of these shrimps will do absolutely fine. And once everything is settled, I shouldn't see any more deaths. They should reproduce. They should eat just fine. They've been eating fantastically, by the way. Before, when they were in that tank, they wouldn't eat much. They weren't acting shrimpy, but I'll put a full veggie pellet in here, and it'll be consumed by the half of the day. And I can even put a second veggie pellet in there, and it will probably be gone before the lights are out on the timer anyway. So, whew, a lot of stuff to go over. But yes, the shrimp are doing good, with the exception of a very few, which I was expecting to pass away anyway. Talk about timers. Yeah. So, got everything on a timer to go off automatically. So, it's time to say night-night to the little shrimpy buddies. So, I will see them when I wake up, and thank you guys for watching. If you're interested in keeping up with these trilogies of my fishy, shrimpy, and snaily adventures, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side.